I am starting a new quilt journey today, and I am bringing you along for the ride with me. I am starting the Fin du Monde quilt by Libs Elliott, and I am starting today, which is February 22nd. I have about an hour in between work ending and my husband getting home with the kids, so we're going to see how much we can get through, and then we'll see how long this journey takes. If you can see this quilt behind me, this was the bloom pattern, also by Libs Elliott. I did this in the fall. I joined her sew squad. I've really enjoyed my time there, and I bought some of her fabric, which in a moment I'll flip around and show you the fabric I bought for her electric pineapple sew along. But when push time came to do that electric pineapple, I'm still in my curves era, and the electric pineapple is so different. And so I said, this isn't really, vibing for me right now, but I wanted to use her fabric in one of her patterns. So that's what we're going to do. This is her fabric and her pattern, and we're going to create something beautiful. Okay, so here you can see this wonderfully colorful fabric called Phosphor Electric. I always want to call it Phosphorus Electric, but it's Phosphor Electric. I love it. It's a printed fabric, so while it's solid-ish, there is a right side and a wrong side, and you can kind of see that it spans the the rainbow, really, from circles the whole color wheel. So I am taking a look at her fabric requirements and swatch tracker that kind of lays out all the different fabrics you need to pick. So I'm going to start thinking and reading through the pattern and this and kind of picking what colors go where. I had bought a half yard bundle, so I have more than enough to get through, and I should have a little extra and maybe even an extra cover. When it comes to the background, I'm going to use black. This is not her black. This is just a generic black I had originally purchased to do that electric pineapple quilt along. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start picking the fabrics, and I will check back when I have completed that. Okay, I'm going to try to kind of walk you through my process here. I am not a color expert. This is not a tutorial. This is an adventure that I'm bringing you on. I'm not an expert here. So she has this pattern broken up between medium, light, and dark. So I kind of went through and started breaking my piles into dark, mediums, and lights. Now, obviously, like this yellow is technically light, but I already have a yellow here. So I kind of did it by color. Like I picked the darkest purple, the darkest blue. And then what I did, and I'll try to, I don't know, I'm still new to YouTube, but I'm going to try to figure out how to insert a picture here where you can see that I took a picture and I put it into black and white so I could kind of see how things fell. And it stood out to me that this yellow was up here in the dark pile, and it really stood out and said it needed to be a medium to me. So I kind of did that, kind of looked at the values in the black and white to see if it looked like my darks and my mediums were good to go. And then I started counting on this sheet. She has like the fabric, and then if it's darker or medium or light. So in my piles, I was like, okay, how many mediums do I need? How many darks do I need? And I have one extra medium and one extra light. And I don't love green. Green is not my vibe. So I think I'm going to yank this green and for another day, and this blue for another day. And this blue, I do like the blues, but I just, there's like a lot of kind of similar. I don't know, right? It's just, you got to go with your gut, right? You can't explain everything. Just feels right that blue comes out to me. So I feel like this is a nice variety of darks, medium, lights. So the next steps will be taking these little post-its that I made and attributing them to the mediums, the darks, and the lights. I am going to be very sophisticated about this, and the colors I like the best I'm going to give to the half yard, and the ones I don't like the most I'm going to give to the fat quarter. Now, if you're a planner, which I am not, there are coloring sheets in the pattern. I believe there's websites you can use to color them and test it all out before you spend your time building the quilt. So take your time and plan if you're a planner. That's not me. Not going to see me planning anything. I'm just going to go for it. So I'm about out of time. I'm thinking I'm feeling motivated. I've been drinking my coffee. After I kind of get the kids settled down tonight, I might come back and do finish the numbers and cut out my templates, and I'll show you kind of, not that I'm an expert, it won't be a tutorial, it'll just be Tasha's way of how I might do the templates and a test block. So I think that'll be my goal, so that maybe this weekend, if I get time, I can start actually cutting this quilt, which will be so fun. All right, that concludes the sorting of the fabric. All right, welcome back to day 2. Last night, the coffee was not strong enough. I didn't get back up off the couch. I have about another hour. So what I decided today, instead of assigning the numbers to the fabric, I wanted to do something that felt like I actually accomplished something. So I'm going to make my templates. I found this crafter's plastic as I'm kind of decluttering my sewing room. I have used this. I've used another. I can post somehow the links of the different things I've used. I've seen people use cereal boxes. I've seen people just use the paper. I do like to use a little bit of plastic on my templates. Just kind of makes me, it just feels a little sturdier. I like it. So I'm going to work on getting all of these shapes onto these templates. What you'll see me do is kind of tape the template to the plastic, and then I will cut around the plastic. I leave the paper on the plastic so I can see what, the letter is and all that jazz. So that is what we're doing for the next however long it takes, or an hour. Back again. It is many hours later, like 12 hours. I really only got 20 minutes earlier today. Took the kids to the trampoline park. I'm very tired, but I got all my templates made onto plastic, and I did a test block. This test block isn't perfect, but I think it is my 1/4 inch seam, which is a little light towards the end, but it's good enough, right? I'm a good enough crafter, not a perfectionist. So I trimmed these down. I got them to 8.5, which is what the pattern calls for. So my next steps will be figuring out what fabrics go with what number, and then starting the cutting journey. That is not happening tonight. So I'll see you then, whenever that is. Okay, it is March 5th, and we are here for an update. I have finished cutting this quilt. Finished it about 2 days ago. Haven't touched it since. So it took me like a little over a week working on it, for up to an hour most days. That involves taking care of kids. So I don't really have a good count. It takes a while. So that's all done. I have it organized by color on the paper plates. I have not exactly figured out what my method of organization is going to be when I start sewing, but chances are I will group them together by the little grid in the pattern. I have my fabric swatch sheet all ready so I can keep track of what's happening. I want to share a few tips with you on how I cut this, and just things for you to think about when you're cutting. If I needed to cut 9 5-inch squares and 2 4.5-inch squares, I would cut the strip 5 inches, get the 9 I need, and then cut down the remaining strips or squares to get to the 4.5. If you cut a 4.5-inch strip, can only get the 2 squares, and then you're kind of stuck with that extra. So that was one thing that really helped me. And the other thing that really helped me is if the outer square shapes you had to cut a bunch of those, especially when I was doing the background, I would take my template and I would measure it, one side of it. If it was about 5 inches long, I would cut a 5-inch strip. And then that way it kind of reduces the amount of cutting you need to do per strip versus, one large piece of fabric and you're kind of cutting everything out. Put one rotary blade in, not two, in your cutter. If you are looking at some of my footage and you see that, oh my gosh, that fabric looks like it's so messy, I thought the same thing. It's because I had two rotary blades in there for a little while. It took me a little while to figure that out. The fabric cuts much nicer and cleaner when you only have one rotary blade in your rotary cutter. So, pro tip, I liked to put painter's tape on the bottom of my templates. It holds them in place. For some of the larger ones, I also added washers to keep them from moving. I like the double security of the washer and the painter's tape. Obviously, do what works for you. The first time I did a quilt, I did the bloom quilt that hangs behind me and I showed at the beginning. The first time I did this quilt that had a bunch of curves, I traced them all. I traced them all with a pen and I cut them with scissors and a rotary cutter. If you don't feel comfortable using your rotary cutter, that's an option. I did this entire bloom quilt with tracing and cutting with scissors or a rotary cutter and a ruler. So do what works for you. I have practiced now. I've created many different quilts, many different techniques, and I'm starting to feel better about cutting these shapes with a rotary cutter. But I did on one of my templates nick off a corner and have to redo that one, right? So do what works for you. Don't get frustrated. Know that it's going to take some time. It's not, as typical as cutting your strips into squares or triangles. Put on a good YouTube show, audiobook, and just enjoy. Take your time. So the next phase of this will be sewing. Welcome back. It's March 11th, so we've been at this like 2-3 weeks, and I have figured out my strategy on how I'm going to put this together. So you can see originally I was just kind of going to start at the top, was going to work on the right half and then the left half and put it together. I got this far and was like, this really isn't working for me. So didn't love that. And so the solution for me is I'm going to first put together all of my 8.5-inch blocks, which means first I needed to put together all my little guys. So actually I'm going to flip this camera around so you can see what I'm talking about. All right. So it's actually 2 days later, because when I flipped the camera around, I realized I had forgotten to do all of the triangles, which are those 2 rows on the right. So what I meant by this is this quilt is made up by 8.5-inch blocks. Some of those 8.5-inch blocks are made up of 4.5-inch blocks. So we have some quarter circles, we have some orange peels, and we have half square triangles. So now, March 13th, I got all these guys put together, and I am now going to go through and put together all of the 8-inch blocks. it is March 19th, so I think I'm about almost a month into this. I have half the heart done, which I'll show you in a minute, but I kind of wanted to just take a moment, and after piecing together a ton of curves and orange peels, kind of show you just very quickly what my favorite technique is for this. So after, I'll just show you half of this orange peel. So my favorite way to do this so far is, you cut them out, you have them ironed, they're ready to be pieced. And first, I like to iron them in half to find the middles. And my favorite technique for this is making the inside piece, you fold in half, do the ironing, and then that creates this little crease in the top, like a little bump. And then I do the outer pieces with the right sides together, so you can see they're opposite, right sides out, right side in. And then for me, there's like glue basting tutorials out there and everything else. What I just prefer to do is kind of come in here. Now I got these two little divots that nest together. So because we did them opposite, so I come in and I like to use pins in 3 spots to start. I do one in the middle where those 2 pins meet. I do one on the end, but like an inch in, because I like to get it started. I do one on the end to get it started, so I can get it started under my machine without having to immediately take the pin out. And then so then I got the 2 pins, and then I just take 1 clip or 2 more clips. I kind of just walk this in, clip, and I fold this in and clip. And then this is my favorite way to sew. I can start here, the pin's far enough away that when I'm starting, I'm not fussing with it immediately. I got these 2 little divots that nest together with my pin holding it strong. It just feels sturdier to me than the clips. Kind of mess around with it and try really, really hard that when you get to that center point, you're not shifting. It takes practice. I get little pleats in mine sometimes. Whatever, in the end, when you quilt it and everything, you're not gonna tell. Well, if you're a perfectionist, you might, but I won't. It's March 19th. I have half a heart, so I have half of the quilt on the left half, missing the top and bottom borders, but we'll get there when the other half is on. And I'm very pleased. I love the colors. I love the pop again of the colors against the black. I think it's coming together really nicely, and I think the other half is going to come together very quickly, and I'm excited to see it all together. Welcome back. It is March 25th and the quilt top is done. So excited. It's the biggest quilt I've done to date, 80 by 96. Whoo! I am quite nervous about quilting this on my little domestic sewing machine, but we're saving that for another day, as I have to switch to a different quilt that I will be gifted to somebody. That has to be done at the end of April. So I will take this outside when the snow is finally gone, despite it being March 25th. We're still getting snow here in New York. I'm really excited. I love the colors. I love the way this turned out. I think it's going to go on my bed. I'm so excited with it. This concludes my biggest quilt I've done to date and my first YouTube video. So I was really, if you made it this far, you made it through a month of sewing with me, I really appreciate it. I hope you come back and check out another video of mine. I really have enjoyed this process. I've enjoyed this quilt. I will get a picture of the final quilt to stick in. I will also probably update with a little video or something when I'm finally quilting it. I'm really excited. What thread color should I use? I'm gonna think I might go with a variegated, but you let me know what you think. So yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next quilt.